Now, money does not and cannot originate by order of the state. In other words, the United States government just couldn't print up little pieces of paper and put numbers on them and expect people to take it. It must originate in the processes of the free market. And before there was money, there was barter. Goods were produced by the people who were good at producing a particular good. So if you were extra good at producing something, then you would likely have a surplus of that, and you would be able to trade your surplus for other goods that you needed. And if you had trees on your property and you're a good wood chopper, say, you might have surplus firewood. But of course, man does not live by firewood alone. And but you find a lady down the road who has chickens, and most egg ladies end up with more eggs than they can eat. So the egg lady and the log guy make a deal, and they trade maybe one egg for one piece of firewood. And of course, this works out fine. But we should always recognize as well that these exchanges can change. Say some of the chickens died. Now, if some of the chickens died, the egg lady would have less eggs, and she wouldn't be as willing to part with, say, one of the eggs for one piece of the firewood. She would likely want 2 pieces of firewood for every egg that she traded. Same way with the log guy. Say there was a fire on his property, and he didn't have as much wood, and he might require a couple of logs for every egg that he would trade for. So these terms of this barter and this trade would change depending on the supply and demand of these particular goods. But the big limitation to barter is the scope of trade. The log man has to find someone who both wants logs and someone who has something that he wants. Same way with the egg lady. She has to find somebody who wants eggs, and that particular person has to have something that she wants. And this is called the double coincidence of wants. It's one of the big problems with barter. Second problem is indivisibility. Now, we can chop up these logs, make them smaller, and work with them fairly well. But eggs, well, they don't chop up very well, unless you wanted to scramble them and do it that way. But that wouldn't really work for our purposes. So indivisibility is a problem with barter. Another problem is business calculation. Business firms must be able to determine whether they're earning a profit or a loss, and this is impossible to do under a barter system. Now, since not many people want to trade for what an individual person has an excess for, he or she must find other very marketable goods that they can trade with. So the log person may store up on another quantity just so that he can use that other quantity to acquire other goods. And that's using those goods as a medium of exchange. So you may not acquire extra logs, or you may not require extra eggs or extra fish or something like that, but you would acquire these goods because you knew they were marketable to other people, and you would use those as a medium of exchange. And as people see a certain quantity or a certain commodity as a medium of exchange and see that it is highly marketable, that is when this medium of exchange becomes money. Now, money is a huge leap forward in the history of civilization. It permitted man to overcome the obstacles of barter, and businesses could then calculate whether they were making or losing money. All goods could be priced in one commodity instead of several. Now, a number of things have been used as money over the years. I'm sure you've heard about these things. Salt, sugar, cattle, cowrie shells, tea, and even cigarettes in prison camps have been used as money. Now, what will be picked as money? What are the characteristics that make a commodity a good money? And the first thing is that it be generally marketable. In other words, it has a high non-monetary demand. And that's why you can see these things throughout history had high non-monetary demand, like salt, sugar, and things like that. Everybody needed them, everybody used them, so they were generally very marketable and they were used as money. The other thing is divisible. What makes a good money is something that can be divided into smaller units. Number 3, high value per unit weight. That means it's portable. Now, cattle doesn't really fall into that category. So I think using cattle as money didn't last very long and wouldn't be particularly practical these days. A good money has to be fairly stable in value. That's number 4. It should hold its value over time. It should be durable, number 5. Number 6, it should be recognizable. Everyone should recognize this particular good as something that has value. And it should be homogeneous. It should be like very consistent in what it is. So over time, 2 commodities have been the most dominant to compete as money. And that's gold and that's silver. And I have some gold right here when it was money. This is a 1895 gold piece. It's unfortunately we have to put plastic around it so my grubby little hands don't, ding it up or anything. But an ounce of gold in 1895 is a $20 gold piece. So this is what $20 used to look like in 1895, back when money was real money. And I don't know if that'll show up. Yeah, you can see how. No. No. I'm sorry, I'm not going to pass that around. If my lawyer were here, I would have her follow it around and do that. But you know where to find me. These are very, very pretty coins. And you can see on there, it does say $20. I don't know if you can make it out very well, but that's what money used to, what it used to be. And of course, gold and silver both were highly prized for their luster and for their ornamental value. They've always been in great demand. They're relatively scarce. They're valuable per weight, and they're very portable, and they're very divisible. Gold is virtually indestructible. You can pull it into a wire miles and miles long, very malleable, and so both gold and silver, very durable and make the perfect money. So the next thing to talk about is what should the supply of money be? Now we hear this all the time. You probably look for money supply figures every week, every month to determine the money supply. But as Murray Rothbard wonders, economists would never ask the question, well, what should the supply of biscuits be, or shoes, or titanium? So even with other goods, we don't worry about what the proper supply is of these goods. But everybody seems to be worried about what the money supply is. Yet we let the market determine what the supply of biscuits is. And so Murray asked, why shouldn't we do the same thing with money? But money is different than biscuits. The more biscuits we have, the better off we are. The more Chick-fil-A sandwiches they can make out of these biscuits or whatever. And the The more plants and equipments we can make, to make these biscuits, that's all the better. But money is different. The more money we have, that doesn't mean we're better off. Even though money is indispensable to production and exchange, it is simply transferred from one person's assets to another. As Mises wrote, any supply of money will be equally optimal to another. Doesn't matter what the supply of money is. To increase the supply of money only dilutes the purchasing power of the existing money. So if overnight the supply of money was doubled, we wouldn't be any better off. Society would be no better off because the real resources, labor, capital, goods, natural resources, productivity, that hasn't changed. Prices overall would double. No one would be better off except for those who received the money first, because they would be able to spend their newfound cash prior to everyone else, take advantage of lower prices. But overall, society would be no worse off with more money. But of course, we hear day after day after day that the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, they need to create more money, they need to create lower interest rates so that we'd be better off. But it's just not true. The market's perfectly capable of deciding what the money supply should be. There's no need for it to keep up with population. There's no such thing as a proper supply of money. Now, if gold was money, the only way to create supply would be to mine more of it. And it would only be mined if it was profitable to create that money. But the other way to create money is counterfeiting. Instead of going to the trouble and expense of mining gold, you might take brass or plastic or some other substance and try to pawn it off as gold. And of course, one of the reasons gold's universal acceptance as money in the free market is it's very difficult to counterfeit. Its look, its sound as a coin, very easily recognizable. Its purity can be readily tested. And I wish this wasn't wrapped in plastic. I'd drop it. Well, I probably wouldn't drop it on that machine, but you would see how heavy it was. How many have never held an ounce of gold? Have you all held a lot of you have never held an ounce of gold? Oh, well, we may have to do that before the week's out. Because it'll have a profound effect on you. You won't want it pried from your cold, dead fingers, as they say. It's a wonderful substance, and it's very, like I say, it makes the perfect money. So that any type of counterfeiting dilutes the value of all the existing dollars, and counterfeiting is an inflation process that injures all legitimate money holders because their purchasing power is diluted. Counterfeiting defrauds and injures everyone. But not everybody is harmed equally. As I said before, the counterfeiters benefit first. If you get the money first, if overnight the supply of money was doubled and you had access to it first, then you could run over here to Mama Goldberg's and Chick-fil-A and use your newfound money to have a run on chicken sandwiches and turkey wraps, probably driving up the price for those who didn't get their money till later in the day, who would experience higher prices. Now, the government's supposed to apprehend counterfeiters, and they do. Believe me, if you want to go to jail, just get into the counterfeiting business, because they don't like the competition. And that's the point here, is that the primary counterfeiter is now the government. And it was the invention of paper money that allowed government to really get into the counterfeiting business.